being fully present, really engaged in the moment is crucial. Oftentimes, the leaders try to change a behavior, but without understanding the underlying reason why the behavior has emerged,
Yeah.
you cannot do lasting transformation with leaders, and that's where it's really important to delve a bit deeper, actually, in the development of yourself.
Yeah.
You cannot stay just at the behavioral level because these transformations will probably come back to what they were once you're in a stress moment.
Hey, Richard, welcome to the show. How are you, my friend?
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Chris. Thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah, you're making me feel lazy now because you've got the stand-up desk, right? I feel like I bought the stand-up desk. I thought I was fully committed, and it doesn't get used. In the pandemic, I was really good with it. You know, every day I was there. But now I've reverted back to a desk. I need to. You've inspired me to get back to doing it.
Yeah, so much changed since the pandemic in the way we are looking at ourselves, even yeah, with the cameras and everything else. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever, really random, but have you ever experimented with those mats that you can stand on, like to
Yes,
support where it kind of makes you move because it has kind of like the bumps and concaves, if that makes sense?
indeed. I can tell you a story even of a compliance issue we had with associates who were on a treadmill while doing a call in a global leadership meeting.
Yeah.
400 people actually attending, and they were panting and breathing very, strongly, and still being visible on camera. And this was the start actually of appearing on video cameras when everybody was actually starting being on cameras. And this week I was thinking about, when did it happen that you used to have interviews face to face,
Yeah.
and very, very occasionally and rarely would you have interviews on video, and now it's completely the opposite actually.
Yes. It's rare
So you
to
have
be
to
in
justify,
person.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
you have to justify for people to come here and really have the face-to-face interaction.
Yeah. I love the fact that that's the one person who was running that should be on mute. You know, and there's normally of all the people that should be on mute, he's the one as well. I love it. He set himself a challenge. He's like, everyone's going to be here, so let me show them that I'm
Yeah.
sticking to my commitment. Before we jump in more, Richard, tell everyone a little bit more about your background because you have quite an unconventional journey to where we are today, and then we'll jump into some of the topics.
Yeah, sure. I'm a graduate from a business school. I didn't do HR as a career choice. HR chose me actually. But very briefly, two blocks in pharma and telecoms, 10 years each. I've done a lot of specialist roles and generalist roles. I worked in three different continents, in Europe, in Asia, in Africa, more specifically in Middle East as well, where I spent 9 years of my career. I lived and worked in seven countries: London, Paris, Tokyo, Cairo, Dubai, Switzerland, in Basel and Zurich, and
Hmm.
yeah.
Wow. I love that. There's so much to go into in that. Now, working in seven countries, right? How did that shape you, both as a HR professional, but also as a father and a husband?
Well, mobility is a family decision.
Yeah.
And I think with my wife, we always had the intention to actually go and explore the world. And ever since I was very, very young, I wanted to have experiences outside of my surroundings. Being a family decision, obviously you got to think about the children, and both my children were born during the period where we lived in Egypt, for example. Then you live and you work in different cultures on a day-to-day basis. It's a continuous challenge. And it's exhilarating, it's really what I wanted to do. Sometimes it comes with difficult moments, um, you know, in retrospect, you always remember the good times of your assignments, wherever you've been, whatever happened. It's always the good times that come back to mind when you think
Yeah.
about it.
Let's break that down for people that are considering some of these, because these are big career opportunities, career defining, that has really shaped you as a leader, right? That the exposure that you have to those multiple cultures, and the with every one of those cultures comes different perspectives and insights, right? In terms of how you lead, how you give feedback, etc. As well. What were some of the biggest challenges that you faced that perhaps going in you maybe have been a little bit naive or, about, and then what are some of the benefits that you receive both personally and also professionally with the family as well?
Yeah, I can start with something maybe a bit more funny here. So cultural mishaps very easy to get through,
Yeah.
So Japan, for example, I offered for a birthday what I thought was a simple bouquet, what was my money could afford at the time, and these were funeral flowers, which I
Oh
think.
no.
Yeah, and just to make things worse, I offered it to my manager. I offered it
Oh
in public, and I offered it it was in Japan. So that
wow.
was probably one of the most embarrassing career moments I had to live through. And sorry again, Atsuko, if you watch this, I love you lots. But this was, yeah, the most embarrassing for myself, but embarrassing for her because she had to tell me at some point. And oftentimes in these circumstances, you don't get to know, for like 6 months until someone tells you, oh, you remember at that moment you broke relationship with that person. They didn't talk to you anymore at that point. And yeah, these are the sort of things that happen. But I mean, you have to learn to adapt to these new surroundings. And I probably built atrophied a muscle in
Yeah.
my brains, right, to do this, to adapt to the new surroundings, new environments, and so away from the general stereotypes that you find, it's how you shake a hand with women in the Middle East, or how deep you bow in Japan, how to give a business card. So these are the stereotypes. But how you appreciate actually those differences in society, in the norms of in the ways of working, how to be able to operate actually in those different environments and to get the best results. And what in retrospect, I think I've incorporated a lot of those things that I've learned even in Japan in my role here in Zurich. So one thing that really stuck with me when I started to delve a bit deeper in cultural differences and cultural models, you will find lots of cultural models that exist out there. But there's one that really stuck with me, the one from Gerd Hofstede. And in particular, there is an element called the power distance. It's a concept that that describes actually the extent to which the less powerful members of an organization expect or accept that power is not equally distributed. And this tells actually the way relationship can work in companies. And when you are then announcing something in certain countries, you go by that filter as well. You go by how you expect people to be interpreting this and how much it's going to be accepted in different places.
Yeah.
So in Japan, for example, what was very famous in Japan is this decision making, which involves a collective and consensual approach, right? And it's often described as this spiral, right? You start from the outer circle and then you enter into the center of the spiral.
Interesting.
It's called the nemawashi. It's the process by laying all the groundwork for decision, by discussing it with all the people that need to be aware before any formal decision is made. And that's where, in the meeting itself, actually nothing is really discussed. It's more about just formalizing the decision that's been made with everybody else, and it helps actually building that
Wow.
consensus. Yeah.
Yeah. When you I just want to ask some personal questions. If that's okay. When you made that decision to move, and because the reason I'm asking this is, like I said to you when we first spoke, after 1,000 episodes of doing this show, some of the most successful HR executives that I've spoken to have said yes to these opportunities that you did. And they always tell me, Chris, if I didn't take those opportunities to work here, work there, pivot within the business, these are the career defining moments that I didn't know at the time would really lead me to where I am right now. So when you sat down with your wife and had that conversation, what led to the yes? What was the main benefit where you were like, okay, these yes, they're going to be challenges, but this is why we have to do this?
Yeah, I think it started deep and far actually in my case on a personal level. I come from the eastern part of France, and you know in my surroundings, the people working on the other side of the border in Germany had actually gained a different status. And I think ever since I'm a kid, you know, I was
Ah,
thinking about that and seeing them as the hero in the family. So go back, you know, into the decision that I had to make very early on. I wanted to make those moves and understood that I had a better opportunity actually on the other side of the border, whatever that border was,
continent.
and continents as well. But yeah, when you live and work in those different cultures, you have to make sometimes a lot of sacrifices as well in the way that when discussing with the family, the spouse has to take a decision about their own career. There are some families where it's just not possible because when, for example, the family member, I work for a pharmaceutical company, when the family member is the spouse is a doctor, for example, well, they have patients, they have a degree which
Sure.
operates in a certain country, doesn't operate in different ones. So in our case, it was different, and my partner was able to actually work as well in these other countries. But it's undoubtedly something that you got to discuss, you know, together, and the chance it also gives to your children, which are sometimes born in a different country and then educated in that different country, in operating in a very multicultural, faceted environment, really opens their mind to something completely different. And we know, Chris, when I realized that the most was when I came back to France. I like to say sometimes that my most exotic career experience was when I returned back to France in an HR director's role because I had fundamentally changed, you know, in the first 10 years of my career or 15 years of my career. I had fundamentally changed from my compatriots there, and it was difficult for me to
Really?
accept again moving back into this environment. And you also have to think about when to come back.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I had so many of those mobilities, so many you know house changes, and there comes a time when you don't want anymore to be opening a bank account, to buy a new car, to open new phone lines,
Those are all
to
the things that people don't think about, right?
yeah, say goodbye to friends, organize a move. We've done probably more than 10 moves in the last 25 years as a family,
Wow.
and it's enormous. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you become, do you become, you know, I don't know how to say it, the guy in the organization they go to now? Like, I mean, like it seems like once you've done one or two, they're like, okay, we know who we need to send in. You know, we know we've got the experience here
Yeah.
uh, with Richard because he can do this. He's done it what with. Is that something that you expected,
It
or did
reminds
you
me.
plan for that? You know, does that make sense? My question.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
totally, totally. Yeah, so it reminds me actually, people I had seen in the Middle East, for example, it was in Egypt, and they described themselves as mercenaries, you
Okay,
know.
but
Yeah. Those people that you send off to the war somewhere,
yeah,
and yeah, sometimes very tragic actually, but yeah, no, not really actually. For me, it was always a case of deciding to go somewhere to acquire a new experience,
mm,
to sometimes learn a new culture, then returning back to Europe to acquire knowledge about the way decisions are taken in the headquarters, and then
mm,
returning to a country to experiment again with a broader role, looking after a larger single country. And then I'm going back to the headquarters to look after a region and a multitude of smaller countries. This, you know, when you drive a career, I always advise, you know, the people that I mentor for their career development. I advise them to be very deliberate and tactical in the way they make those career choices. It has to be provoked. You know, it doesn't happen by coincidence. Although companies sometimes make it possible, you still are in the driving seat, and it's not a right for you to develop, it's a responsibility. It's an obligation
I
for
love
people to
that.
develop and to continuously try to be better, to be more marketable. And I think that's the perspective I took personally. So in making those movements, I also studied in one of the company I was working for, what took some of the leaders to the top of the organization. And oftentimes they had done multi-divisions
Yeah.
in the organization. They had done multi-cultures, and they had done regional and local roles as well. And this is really career-defining moments. When you can bring in these three dimensions, you've really started to operate at a more global level as a leader.
Yeah. I noticed the same thing. There's one of the trends throughout doing this for this long during my interviews. You're right. They've worked across multiple functions, multiple continents, multiple cultures. And that exposure, they really understand the organization. Not just they truly understand the business and inside and out. And I think that's really important. But it's hard, right? Let's not pretend it's easy because you've had to create an entire family lifestyle and support system to support this decision.
That and there comes a time also when you realize that you have I like that description I heard once in a documentary, someone talking about living abroad. And when you do that over and over again, you end up having met a lot of people and having encountered a lot of people and colleagues actually in a horizontal way, right?
Mm.
But not in a vertical way.
Yeah.
And you've seen people in a slice of their life, if that makes sense. You've seen them at point in time, they're married, they have one kid, and then 10 years later they're divorced and they have another family set up, and their life has moved into a completely different way. So yeah, you end up having these disparities between those who have traveled a lot and done a lot of those experiences. And that's what I talk about when I say you have to think about when to come back. Your parents are getting older, your
Yeah.
family is getting tired, you're getting tired as well. You want to reconnect with your roots. If nothing actually keeps you in the country where you're based, be it religion, a marriage actually with someone from that culture, you need to share something deeper actually with that place. And otherwise, most of the people who actually would end up living in a place where they feel is back to their roots, and you have to define sometimes where are those roots. I'm often asked where is home. I always say home is where I have my bed, and that's the easiest definition I
Yeah.
can give about what home is actually. Yeah.
I love that. Do you think you'd be as successful as a CHRO without that experience?
No, probably not. Yeah, this really gave me the possibility to be considered as a global leader. The fact that you understand more, you're more likely to appreciate the different cultures and the ways of thinking. So yeah, it really defined me as a person, and as a leader in my role. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's I think that's great advice for everyone listening, right? For them to really stand out. This is a way for them to really stand out from their peers. There's not many CHRO seats in the world, and the level of experience that you bring to the table. And when did you know at this point in your career, to that point you just mentioned, that this was now the time for you to plant some roots and step into this is your first CHRO role, if I'm correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
Actually. Yeah.
I know, feel like even though I don't know you that well, I can feel like this was very intentional about planting roots. When did you know that now is the time that I want to really plant roots and step into the CHRO role?
Um, uh, I was doing that career transition actually, and I wanted to do a career break, and I put together my bucket list of what I really wanted to do. And my point number one was to enroll into a psychology course. And by the way, I never got to point number two because I got offered the next
That's
role
a good thing. You didn't get distracted. That's
at
good.
that stage.
That's good.
But then I was looking at different models of psychology, like transaction analysis, and
Yeah.
I came across Gestalt therapy, and I learned a lot about myself and who I was, what I wanted to do. And this was one of the interventions which made me clearer about who I was and the direction I was going to take in my life. I had other interventions, such as a leadership intervention, where I learned to understand better what was my innate talent, and it's something that I'm really passionate about. Um, so I think it was Kevin Cashman who described leadership as courageous, authentic influence that creates enduring value,
Oh,
which I love as a definition.
I love
Um,
that definition. That's
it's
great.
this is about people being who they really are, not being someone else. And you can be working in a very large organization, being in a super nice position actually, and still being a very small cog in that very large business. So being CHRO means that you get a lot more independence, you get a lot more opportunities to take decisions yourself. But then you're also expected to be driving the organization with your set of values and the talents that are innate to you. And this is something I'm trying to develop with the leaders that I coach and the leaders that I mentor. It's
Yeah.
helping them being really themselves, not being someone else.
Yeah. I struggled with that a lot in my career. I think early on I kind of was trying to live up to an expectation of what I thought this I should be,
What I
right?
mean,
And it's exhausting, right? Because
totally.
yeah, you don't realize how much energy and drain that it's taking, and it's hard to really make meaningful connections. And I think, unfortunately, I came from a leadership style in that organization that the way they led was, led with a carrot and a stick, and is they're not your employees aren't your friends. You don't go out to lunch with them. You don't go and meet them on the
Oh,
weekend, and you're the manager, they're the employee, and for a couple of years it really was painful. And I think the breakthrough for me is when I got I think I did like a 360 feedback with my
wow.
team, and I kind
Yeah.
of saw all of the it was really hard to read. And I was like, that's not who I am. But I'm like, well, that's what I was projecting. And I think the moment I really opened up and just became Chris, and it was just a game changer. Like build real meaningful connections based on and trust
Yeah.
beyond the job title, beyond the seat, beyond all of that. And all of a sudden, it was just a game changer.
So
Um,
yeah, I mean, I can totally relate to what you're saying because this is very often where leaders start their leadership journey. It's about being who they really are, not being someone else. And many of the key talents and successors are in the shadow of a charismatic leader. Imagine being, working for Amazon or Apple in the shadow of Jeff Bezos or Steve Jobs. And these people, they're not perfect, right?
no, no, by any means, they're not.
They all come with their dark sides, but they are references for these key leaders. And then those leaders they want to become, but they cannot because they're not them, right? The intervention specifically that really changed my perception is that I had to understand what was my key innate talents, the talents that I was using the most naturally, without forcing, without
Hmm.
even noticing, without counting my time. It's when I get in my flow, actually,
Your flow
in a
state.
flow of work.
Yeah. Mm.
And then, for some, it's public speaking, not for me. For others, it's recording a podcast and making people feel comfortable. That's maybe one of your talent. For some, it's analyzing insights, and they just get into their thing and they love it. And when you feel you're not really working anymore, this
No.
is when you're really in your groove, right? And then it's also about understanding what are the leaders' personal values, something really deep, actually deeply ingrained into who they are. It's not the company values,
Yes.
which tend to be always the same, between you take the mix of the 10 most successful companies, you end up having a list of what are the values you will find pretty much anywhere. But it's theirs, it's what someone really truly stands for. It comes down to education, to experience, to influences. And where you have your personal talents and the flow, meet your personal values, that's the magic place I
Yeah.
call your leadership intent. Leaders who touch that point really make a difference because then they become this authentic influence and they create value, enduring value. Defining that place and being then deliberate in communicating about it as a leader to your teams, projecting yourself as that to your teams, filtering the decisions you're taking as a leader is really what I'm trying to do in my role. That's why I personally enjoy the most.
Now, I love this, and I talk about it all the time on the show. And Shane and I, my co-founder, when we first started the company, that wasn't clear for us. We were, in terms of where our strengths or weaknesses, what gives us energy, what takes away energy, and there was kind of a bit of chaos in that. And in silence, there were things I was doing which were making me miserable, vice versa for him, but we didn't tell each other. We were just trying to plow forward, right? And we happened to go to a sort of a mastermind, 2-day mastermind led by a guy called Nick Craig. He wrote a best-selling book called Leading with Purpose. So companies like Unilever, they put over 15,000 of their leaders through this program. And it's around connecting the purpose with the business, right? And really the personal purpose. But it goes a lot deeper than that. You go into your crucible story, you look back at your childhood, kind of really how that stuff really defines. And Shane and I were like, we don't have time to go to this, but we ended up going to it, and it was the biggest game changer for us as leaders, because we were in separate groups actually throughout the 2 days, so we never really had a chance to do that. But I came out of that realizing that all the things that I was doing were like not leaning into my strengths, to your point. And a lot of that came back to my childhood, and at the end of it, we came together, and you end the event with a purpose statement. So my purpose statement was to be the unbreakable artist that dances you to life, right? Wow. And the reason that means a lot, I grew up as a dancer, I grew up as an artist, so there's like key words in there that really trigger an emotion and a memory. And dances you to life represents my passion for growing and developing talent. And unbreakable artist is my role as CEO and founder of the company, is to constantly be challenging the status quo, disrupting, even when the team don't understand it and they think I'm crazy. And Shane has the opposite, right? So that's Shane manages our finance, our operations. He steadies the ship. He's the foundation of the business. So I can be out there running and constantly challenging, so between us both, we have that. I can go out, sell products, create products, sell them, speak to incredible people like you, build the brand, and Shane then delivers on that promise to our customers. Whereas before we had that flipped around. And so I explained that to the team. I explained it to any new person that, hey, I'm a little bit unorganized. It's a bit chaotic when you're working with me. So just expect that, right? I might have one idea today and I might be running another day. So, people understand that's where, so they will probably go to Shane when they want a bit more organization, right? Whereas I need to be let loose in order to do that. And before I felt constrained to be able to do that. But just to give you an idea, we 5x'd our revenue the next year. After that, right? So it wasn't just something that just happened. And someone yesterday, we had an external producer we hired in just for the day yesterday for a show. He pulled me to one side. You'll appreciate this. And he said, he called me over. He's like, Chris, can I have a quick conversation? I was like, sure. He was like, you don't stop. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, since you've been here, you've gone from one meeting to a podcast, to an interview, to a podcast, to doing some work there. He's like, I don't understand. And I was like, I'm having fun. And I think he didn't understand. He was like, you haven't even taken a second or a break. I was like, this is fun for me, right? And he was almost confused via that. But anyways, so I love what you're saying, and I think it's such an important point. So I really appreciate you bringing that up.
That's exactly what we were saying before. When you feel you're not really working anymore, that's really the place where you want to be. And just to share my own personal intent, with compassion and insight, reveal and inspire possibilities together with courage and decisiveness. And when filtering the things I'm doing through that lens,
yes,
I know that I'm going to be in the right space actually to do what's really matters for me.
Yeah. And also during the chaos, during the pandemic, that acted for me and Shane as a foundation to make decisions. So when there was no one really knew where the world was going, no one knew exactly what was happening, you can only control the controllables. We made decisions based on that foundation, and it's always served us well. So ignoring external noise ignoring the fear mongering and the things, and just like, let's make decisions based on these principles and these foundations, ignore all the noise. And it's always served us well. And the team can see that we stick to it, and we live by what we say, and we go do it. Most importantly, as well.
In,
Go on, sorry.
in my psychological studies of Gestalt, I became a practitioner of Gestalt um, uh, foundations actually, and I needed to learn getting a deeper understanding of my own emotions. You talk about shame, but also the biases, the reactions that I have, and that self-awareness allows me to be a lot more effective than in my interactions with people. But you're talking about building presence here as well. Being fully present, really engaged in the moment is crucial. Oftentimes, the leaders try to change a behavior, but without understanding the underlying reason why the behavior has emerged,
Yeah.
you cannot do lasting transformation with leaders, and that's where it's really important to delve a bit deeper, actually, in the development of yourself.
Yeah.
You cannot stay just at the behavioral level, because these transformations will probably come back to what they were once you're in a stress moment.
Yeah. No, I love that. I wanted to ask you, when you stepped into this role, did perception meet reality? Your idea of what you would face as a CHRO, you've been obviously working towards this a lot, in your entire career. Did perception meet reality when you sat down in the CHRO seat? Now you've been in the role for some time.
Yeah, so certainly, but nothing ever stays static anyway. So things have moved on since, although it's only been 2 years now. Things have already moved on, and I can see that the role is also transforming in the future, and for good reasons. So yeah, I was never disappointed actually with the choices I've made in those roles. There's been harder moments than others, but yeah, this has been a roller coaster so far. It will probably continue, but I love it. I love the ability to take decisions, the large latitude that you're given in this position to make a difference in people's lives, and this really fulfills my need, my intent as a leader as well. So as long as I'm able to do that, then I think I'm in the right place.
Yeah, I love the way you put that. You're okay with the ongoing barrage of challenges, whether it's a pandemic, whether it's politics, whether it's there's the social movement. There's always something right coming up. But your North Star and your foundation is well, that's fine as long as I can continue to deliver value for our employees and for society and their families. It's like a balance, right?
Totally. And we were talking about mobilities earlier on, and experiences that you have there, and social movements, and there is also the revolutions sometimes that happen.
Yeah.
And these also come in the way of your career. We were in Egypt when we got evacuated, for example, with one child, and I couldn't actually go with my family back to Europe. I was stranded there because my passport had burned into
Oh, wow.
a civil office. In these moments, you really realize what really matters, and where do you place your priorities, and family is the priority in that context, and that brings actually the realism back into what we are trying to do as leaders as well, because we're first fathers, husbands, sons, before being a leader even. Yeah.
Incredible. Well, listen, before I let you go, firstly, thank you for coming on the show.
My
I
pleasure.
appreciate it. I've really enjoyed it. And you've kind of unlocked some memories for me and make me consider some pivotal
Great.
moments that we've had, right, that I never really had thought about for a long while as well, which is super important. So I appreciate you for bringing that up. It kind of give me some time to reflect on that. And maybe need to catch up with Shane and have another conversation. What would be your parting piece of advice for all of the HR leaders out there that are sort of working their way to sit in that seat, or currently are sitting in that seat that you're in right now? And then we'll say goodbye.
Um, I'd say, on a personal level, take development risks, don't stay where you are, where you feel comfortable, but yeah, take that extra risk that can actually take you to that next step. It's a responsibility really, and really, be who you are and say what you feel. I think it's the Dr. Seuss saying, because those who mind don't matter, and those who matter don't mind. But just don't get yourself fired in the process, actually. Yeah.
But on that point, sometimes you do have to walk away. So there's also many leaders that I spoke to in the past that say, Chris, there is a time that if you don't get that, don't just hang around. There is a time that you do also need to stop waiting for a tap on the shoulder and take charge as well. Well, listen, I appreciate you coming on the show. I wish you all the best. I hope we get to meet in person one day.
Thank you, Chris. It's a real pleasure.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot.